Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Chamber, brought to you by the Bluff Council. The Chamber, our free-flowing discussion show where we talk about movies of the past as opposed to our mildly structured discussion show and our two other types of discussion show that we haven't
done yet.
So, this is the one where we talk about old movies. That's you can just call it that. Really excited because this is a movie that I have talked about wanting to do for a long time. It's a movie I adore. Loved it as a kid, and it's certainly a fascinating rewatch today. It is the movie Willow.
From the creator of Star Wars and the director of Cocoon, Willow.
Welcome.
Starring Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, Joanne Whalley, soon to be Whalley-Kilmer, once these two gotta look at each other. Directed by my arch nemesis, Ron Howard.
My mother-in-law lived the last 5 years of her life in Paradise. That's a town that I knew.
And there's so much to discuss. I'm just excited. Keith, tell me about Willow, bro.
I don't know how to handle this episode. I don't know how to handle it. I watched Willow for the second time last night. The first time I watched it was, I want to say, in the early 90s. I watched it as a kid. And I'm curious to hear, which I assume you did as well. You watched it as a kid or growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely a movie that I've seen somewhere between 800 and 1,000 times. Like, I'm not exact. Like,
oh, wow.
This was one of our VHSs.
Yeah.
And that, once a week, I watched Willow for most of my life.
Wow. Okay. All right. Because on my second watch, I had a very different opinion than my first watch. So, it's
a fascinating film to watch now, like under a critical eye.
Yeah.
To try to like take it in as a film and not as like a memory, because even though I watched it way more than you did as a kid, it lives in my brain as a memory of like the specific parts of the film that I love, which there are a lot, and like the way that made me feel as a kid. And honestly, not to overhype this, the way that like shaped the way I look at the world. Because I really do, we'll get to it. Like there's a lot of aspects of Willow that I feel like really colored the way I viewed the world. Like it's gnarly.
Yeah, you're giving the film way too much credit. The film is made for two types of people. One, people who kids who like fantasy films, and two, people who don't understand how to make movies. So those. All right. Well, those are the two people who can enjoy this film.
Let's come back to part two, or your point two. But let's start with point one. That seems like an okay place to start here.
Sure, it's a safe space.
I just want to do that. I watched the first half of this movie on my most recent rewatch with Monique, and I just turned to her every like 10 minutes, and I was like, kids movie. Kids movie. Like, this is a fucking kids movie. And it's the point that we've made a bunch of times, and I know other people have made it too, is like, God bless the 80s. God bless, like, so fortunate to have been born in that decade and like consume media at that young age where this was, I don't know, I can't remember because I was 4 years old when this movie came out. I don't know if it was marketed heavily as like a kid's film, but I think it was like certainly on VHS as like a family film.
At last, a family epic with a heart to match its spectacle. Willow, available now on video cassette.
Like this is a movie you watch as a family.
I watched it with my family. I did.
Yeah,
that's how I watched it.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch anything as a kid, and somehow this was okay. Like this was fine. This movie is as scary and as dark as like almost a lot of R-rated films. Like it's heavier than any Marvel movie today, and those movies are all PG-13. This is a PG film.
So I mean that's a tough curve to grade it on today versus yesterday. I would say.
Well, I know, but that's what's amazing.
I think it was on the more mild end of the extreme kids movies, if that makes.
Oh, I don't know.
You think it was that? Like don't get me wrong. Today's standard, that film might be R, but
yeah,
then
that's what I'm saying.
I don't think. But then I don't think it was that.
I don't know, because by those, what do you consider of the '80s like the most extreme kids movies? Because I think of like I always think of my example of the film Cloak and Dagger, which had Henry Thomas.
You know what I'm gonna do to you, boy? I'm gonna blow both your kneecaps off.
And then I think of the Goonies.
Hit puree! No! I'm too young! No! I want to play the violin! Not my hand!
And E.T. is not a violent film, but it's a very like heavy, emotional film.
Leave him alone!
Shows an absence of spike in the gamma globulin
You
range.
leave him alone, I can take care of him.
And so I rank this up as far as PG movies to have a scene where a troll peels its own skin off with like tentacles and it's all bloody and bubbling underneath, and like there's that giant monster gets fucking decapitated, and those dogs are in the first scene of the movie they eat a woman alive. Like that's heavy shit, man. Like that's like that's hard to watch almost now. Like I remember like being 11 and having seen Willow 150 times, and I still looked away when that thing ripped its skin off. Like, okay. Like, that's like The Thing. That's like something you would see in the movie The Thing, which is the most gnarly shit ever. Like, it's heavy. It's pretty twisted.
Fair. That looked like a little brain. Like when it came out, I was like, that looks like a human brain, like an empty brain.
It is nasty. It is nasty. PG.
Yeah.
They would struggle to put that in a PG-13 movie right now. They would struggle to put that scene.
Yeah. Just because, yes, we don't need to debate that because it's watered down is not the right word to what today's standard is. So it's unfair. It's unfair.
It's all proof that we are the greatest generation. that's all it comes back to.
Well, I feel like we have I feel like there was just a level of like balance that just doesn't exist today. Everything is extremes all the time, always. It's like it's too much.
Classic conversation is they didn't pander. That's the main thing. Is they're not pandering down. They're not playing down to their audience. They're showing you real dark drama scariness, because the movies are supposed to make you feel like that. And if you're a kid, fear is an easy emotion to elicit out, of a child viewer. And that shit, like, that's what makes it memorable. Moments like that are what make me look back on Willow so fondly, because it made me feel so strong.
Well, that whole genre, that whole 2 decades maybe, or decade and a half. There's a huge difference. There was a huge difference in the distinction that it's a movie for kids and a movie that kids could watch.
Yeah.
There was a huge difference, and today that difference does not exist.
Yeah, I read a great, to give it some credit, I read a great little snippet of a review. It might have been on Wikipedia, so anybody can see it. I forget the gentleman's name, but at the time, I think he was writing for USA Today, and he said something along the lines of, Willow is it's probably a little too dark and intense for the youngest viewers, and it's probably a little too formulaic and simple for any adult viewer. But for anybody that's like age 6 to 13, this might be a film that makes them like love movies forever. Like, this is the movie that makes you get bit by the movie bug. And I would say that, I mean, you can't be a dick about it now just because it didn't for you. Because this movie, I think, did have that impact on a lot of people, and that's why it's getting revamped as a fucking Disney Plus series 30 years later.
Yeah, we heard you, die-hard Willow fans. The Willowmongers, the Willing Me Softlies, the Low Boys. You get the idea. We're still workshopping fan-based names for that.
That's a separate issue.
It's gonna be terrible.
Yeah, I think this is This is a fairy tale. This is a sort of a throwback to like the 40s and 50s to me of like storytelling. It's just like a I don't want to even say feel good because that's misleading based on what we're talking about. But it's it's a good versus evil classic tale where good is going to triumph. Love will win, and that is as deep as this film gets. So when I saw it as a kid, it was fun because I'm not thinking about those things, And the only thing I remember as a kid, watching this film now, I was like, wasn't there like these funny people that I like? Oh, this movie was hilarious at times. And then I saw those little like I forget what they're called, but the Brownies. The Brownies.
Kevin Pollack.
Yeah, Kevin Pollack make a guest appearance as a brownie, and I was like, all right. And when he popped out and was like, beer, I was like, this is the funniest movie of all time.
Trying to fuck the cat. Yeah.
That's what I liked as a kid. There was a little bit of danger. There was a little bit of comedy. There was beautiful people in the film, and good beats evil.
Yeah.
It's a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale that...
It's a fantasy film.
It's a fantasy film that kids can enjoy because that's the sort of the complexity they might be able to handle. So...
For sure.
That is the best part of the film. Actually, I have one other good part of the film, but I don't know if you want to get to it.
Let's hear it. Let's sing its praises, and then I'm gonna just cut the episode.
Done. Just beat me, because I would like to tear it apart. I like the costumes. I thought the costumes and the set design and the wardrobe props, things of that nature. I mean, really the costumes. I liked that guy's skull. I thought that was cool. We've talked about like the practical nature of things, which I always enjoy. But I thought they did like the evil queen or whatever looked. I thought she looked really evil. Like she had a real menacing vibe to her without CGI and without. Especially when they cut back to her like towards the end, and she's like with the rain and things are like her face even looked more
she's like
weathered.
melting almost. Like she looks horrible.
Yeah. So and that's I would think super scary for a kid. Like that would be impactful. I think as a kid, be like, this is. I might have a few nightmares based on this evil queen being so evil. And her performance, I think was pretty good. I think as an evil queen, I thought she was pretty good. So there was a couple things I could get behind in the film.
That you can start to list a couple things that you can get behind, and the number 1A is not Val Kilmer is the greatest person in the history of cinema in this movie. I think is an incorrect take. Because let's start there. We want to sing some praises.
I don't think this is Val Kilmer's best performance. He's great because Val Kilmer is great. Like he's great. I love Val Kilmer. Great, but
no one ever said it was his best performance.
That's what that's what you're leading up to. That's how you're.
No. I just said he's amazing. He's amazing. 2, it's his second best performance of all time. 3.
All right, what's his best performance?
His best performance is Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday. Sorry, Doc Holliday in Tombstone.
In Tombstone.
You must be Doc Holliday.
Well, that's the rumor.
You retired too?
Not me. I'm in my prime.
That's probably his best performance. And he has several other very, very good performances. I love Mad Martigan, and I think it's a especially during this kind of Val Kilmer appreciation renaissance in the wake of the revelations about his unfortunate situation, his health situation, and the tragic fact that he lost his voice, and that documentary that came out and whatnot. People are really celebrating his career because he had such a great career and had a hand in so many memorable films. And I feel like Mad Martigan always gets overlooked, and I think that's a mistake because I really do think that this guy in this film should have launched a franchise. like I think he is the definite, like he is every bit as cool as Han Solo in Star Wars. He is like swashbuckling, the definition of like a swashbuckling scoundrel who like is gorgeous and virile and an amazing swordsman and funny and reads poetry to the ladies and is just like a great time. Like you want to be with this dude the whole time. Like when he's not on screen, I'm like disappointed. You know.
I'll give you a tough question for you at home. You can jump in as well. Who would you prefer, Val Kilmer in this film or Carl Elwes in Princess Bride?
Oh, Carrie Elwes, is that what you pronounce his name? I always say Ooze.
Is it? Maybe I'm butchering people's name. It's.
No. I've always known I've pronounced his name wrong. I'm sure it's not Ooze.
Elwes. I thought it was
Carrie.
It's Carrie. It's a not Carl. Yeah, Carrie. It's Carrie. It's pronounced Carrie.
As far as I know.
I'm Carrie Elwes, and you may know me from The Princess Bride.
Sure, I don't know. Carrie Elwes. I thought it was Elwes. You know what?
Sure.
Let's cut this whole thing. I can't.
No. I'll absolutely choose Val Kilmer, hands down. It's not tough. Carrie Ooze is great in The Princess Bride, and The Princess Bride is a superior film. But they're very different. But yeah, I think Val Kilmer as Mad Martigan is everything. And I think just a quick allusion to what I had, a quick reference to what I had alluded to earlier, like Mad Martigan had such an impact on the way I looked at, I promise this is gonna sound like I'm joking, but I was fucking 5 years old. Like on the way I viewed like masculinity, like the way a man was supposed to be, and like the way a hero is supposed to be. Like he was sort of the archetype for me of all of those things. Like he's my first like cinema hero that I really remember. I loved, like my favorite scene was always like, and this will tell you a lot about me as a child, was always when he gets fucking fucked up on love potion dust and goes into the tent and starts like spouting poetry like, without you, I dwell in darkness. Like, your touch is worth 1,000 deaths.
Your touch is worth 100,000 deaths.
And she just like fucking falls for him in that moment. Like, and I'm like this little like soft poet kid, like this fucking poetry, baby. Like this is it. And then like he knocks the tent down and kisses her as it falls. Like that is just like great stuff. I literally like remember going to school and being like, I have to be more like Mad Martigan. And I just want justice for Mad Martigan. He deserves to be on the Val Kilmer Mount Rushmore.
I think it just goes to show how dumb kids are. It's a dumb thing because of how impressionable it's who gets to you first as a kid. Like you love this character because he got to you first. It sounds like if you watch him at 5, when did you watch Tevye? When did you experience him for the first time?
From the womb. I feel like I came out. I came out doing this. Hi, Mom.
So it's. I think it just speaks to. I mean, what can you trust? That's what it tells me. What can you really trust? Is it just like when something like gets to you and it becomes like a revelation because it's the first time you've experienced something, or is it actually good?
I'm not going to sit here and argue that Willow is a super well-made film, like really perfectly written, really excellently directed. Special effects are all like hold up well. Like I'm not going to do any of that. But I would say, unbiased opinion, I hope that is like a fun, like funny, charming, enjoyable hero character that deserves more credit in like the pantheon of like sci-fi fantasy film history. Like the way that Han Solo is held up as some like reverential figure, because he is. Like I'm not hating on fucking Harrison Ford as Han Solo. I love Han Solo. Like Mad Martigan deserves to be up there. He's fucking hilarious. From the minute he shows up in the film in that cage, like he's so funny.
Ooh, I'm really scared. No, don't! There's a peck here with an acorn pointed at me!
But I would also, I won't dwell anymore on Val Kilmer's awesomeness, but I think between Val and Warwick Davis, who has always been one of my favorites because of this movie, he is such a good actor. And I don't know if you ever watched Life's Too Short.
Hi, how's it going? What seems to be the problem? I've contracted AIDS.
How did you get that?
From an African prostitute.
It's really good stuff, and I wish that there was more for Warwick Davis to do. But so I think my point, is that Val Kilmer, Warwick Davis, Jean Marsh, who's the Queen, and some other supporting performances. Like some of the performances are pretty good. Like that goes a long way in this film.
I want to mention in terms of performance, I forget people's names, like even the character. I want to say it was like Aric, the other.
Yeah.
I thought he was the second best out of everyone. Like I thought he was really good. I bought him as that character. He was regal. He spoke well. Yeah. He had a big presence. He seemed strong. He seemed like he fit that role really, really well.
Yeah. He's like he's perfectly cast. He's always somebody that stood out to me too, where I'm like, that guy looks like the kind of guy that would survive. Like I want that guy on my side.
Yeah, until the end. Spoilers.
We might as well get into what you don't like, Keith. You dumbass. You Grinch. You Scrooge.
None of it makes sense. They defeat the queen. Who becomes queen until the kid is old enough to become queen?
Oh well, I assume it's Mad Martigan and the daughter.
Oh, she the daughter just becomes a good queen?
Probably. She wears white and she's super hot now. Like she's a good queen. Like, what do you want?
I thought that was like really, I mean, this may seem nitpicky, but to me it was like a really big thing. Like the whole point of this movie is to have, is that this baby girl is the chosen child to overthrow, the thing that's gonna overthrow the queen is this child, and this girl is presumed to take the throne. That's how at least I interpret it. But it's a baby. So what happens? Like I can't have like a fulfilling ending because I don't realize what this prophecy is until 18, 20 years. Like again, it probably seems like a nitpick, a small thing, but to me, that was a big deal. Like you can't pay off the thing that you've set up to be this whole film.
Well, no, you're making kind of 2 points simultaneously now. You might be doing one on accident, which is the smart one. The one I know you're trying to make is dumb, and that I think is I don't think who's running shit until that baby's old enough is that much of a issue, because I think that's something that happens in real life, like like in the past where royalty, like young King Louis in France or whatever, like his dad might have died when he was 6, like that kid's still the king. But you have advisors around. You have people that are basically like in your stead, interim counselors, people that are helping you manage things and making decisions for you until you need to. The point that you're kind of tangentially bringing up that I think is interesting is that in the film, Bavmorda, the queen, like accidentally kills herself, kind of, because she casts its own spell that spills this blood, and she ends up like banning herself to this nether realm or whatever.
I didn't understand how that worked. Like I didn't understand how that worked at all.
So I think that's what it was, because she had like charged up this blood or whatever, this potion that was going to be what the baby was in, and for the spell to dissipate this baby and banish it to this other world where it can never harm her. Instead, as she's already charged it up, she spills it and it lands on her, so it ends up sending herself, banishing herself to this other world. So like, but then, so the prophecy didn't matter? That's an interesting point, because now the baby didn't even have to grow up and defeat her. She just defeated herself by like leaning on a table.
Yes.
Which is kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, it felt like the end of the resolution of the film had nothing to do with the point of the film, of getting this baby. Like the baby played no role in this, and then you can't even see the day.
Fucking baby can't even kill a queen.
Another thing, but this is probably more personal to my taste, but this is a great example of the reason why I never really enjoyed fantasy movies, is because I just have such a hard time following everybody's powers. If that evil queen can turn everybody to pigs whenever she wants. What do you need an army for? Like, what is all this? How does people even get into her castle? And also, what is that other witch or whatever could just be like, but I can beat her. Why? Who are you? Why? All of it in like a middle. Like,
you've been a fucking muskrat this whole time.
Yeah, we met you an hour into this film, and there was no even like folklore or setup to like this is the thing you need to. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I don't know. And then she could just defeat her, kind of. But why? Like, I have such a hard time following people's like powers to know the stakes of like, should I be nervous now? Can she handle that? Can she not handle that? I get lost. I get lost in all that shit. It's hard.
Yeah, that's fair. This movie has a lot of like what you can call plot holes. And,
just don't think about it. I mean, that's the thing. You just don't think about it.
Yeah, it is a don't think about it movie and just sit back and eat some popcorn. And I think like by that standard, as I've made the point before, every movie made before 1999, even the worst popcorn movie before 1999 is better than most of the best films released like nowadays. So I think it's great for that. And it's obviously great if you watched it for the first time when you were 5 or 6 and fell in love with it. So.
Yeah. When you can't be judgmental about it. Is there anything you didn't like? Because I'm sure I could continue with things I didn't like.
Well, is this when you want to talk about that hack Ron Howard?
That's a town that I knew.
Yeah, I'll let you kick that off because you have a personal beef.
No, I'm joking. I mean, most of the stuff that I would say I didn't like is
directly Ron Howard's fault.
Yeah. Is his face, is the fact that he's always directing films. Ron Howard, a very storied director, I think underrated almost. I think it's like simultaneously underrated and overrated in the history of his career. I really do, because I think he's prodigious, and he's made some of some really awesome films over the last 40 years, like he's been doing this for so long. And then I also think that like he hasn't made as many great films as you would want, he doesn't have like a trademark style or film the way that like a Scorsese or a Spielberg or other directors of sort of that prominence level have. And I was reading a bit that Willow was criticized early on for its direction. And I was like, well, that seems strange. But on watching it again, this is just sort of Ron Howard's general criticism, I think, of his work, is that it's not bad, but he never takes a lot of chances. It's very safe filmmaking as a whole. Like, set up the shot the way that is like simple and easy to see and isn't gonna push any boundaries. And then so as I've gotten more familiar with Ron's work, we're on a first name basis. As I've gotten older and have watched him critically with every turn, I can see that more on this rewatch, where it's like, oh yeah, certainly not something you notice when you're 5 or 6, and then you don't notice it when you watch a movie you love. But then as you really look at it critically, you're like, it's just the camera's just kind of doing safe bets on what a camera should do.
Yeah. I think that's an accurate critique of Ron Howard. I don't think he's not going to do anything to add a level of perspective, but he also won't do something to ruin your perspective as the viewer.
Yeah.
He'll be in the middle the whole time. You know? So
it's not even really meant as an insult, but it's just like, it's kind of vanilla.
Yeah.
Like he's just kind of like a safe vanilla bet to like tell the story competently, and it's sometimes like even beyond that, because I think there's certain subject matter that really suits itself to like a more simple, safe style. I think hands down, Apollo 13 is one of the better movies I've ever seen. I think it's a perfect film. I think it's like perfectly executed. It's one of those perfect movies, and one of my 20 or 30 favorite films.
Wow.
So like when the subject matter suits his style, it's a great match. And I'm sure I know people really like A Beautiful Mind, which I thought was like pretty good. Like I didn't like love it the way some people do. And he's got a lot of other films, but then he's got a number of films that, I don't know. I tried to watch his Solo, that Han Solo movie. I tried to watch that movie like 5 times. I've turned it off every time. I just can't do it. And I love Star Wars stuff. That's kind of an extreme example because he was brought in after the fact because they fired the original director halfway through.
It might not be
so
all
that's
his
not
fault.
entirely his fault. Maybe that, lends itself to why Willow wasn't considered like a smash success the way that people had hoped it was, which I think is honestly kind of interesting because I read that it had a $35 million budget and it grossed like 140 worldwide. So it's like it made $100 million in 1988. Like that had to be pretty good, but people weren't as excited about it back then. And it really found its second life, as so many films did, on VHS and home video, Oh, here's one point I didn't make in the praise of performances. Does this film have the best baby acting of all time?
Does have some good baby acting.
Throughout the beginning especially, that baby is making faces I don't know how you can coach a baby to make.
It's a good point.
Like,
I'm glad you brought it up.
The cutest, best, most like nuanced little responses of like little eyebrow raise, little like
some
little
smirks,
cute looks, like just like this
smirks.
baby, someone is talking to this baby.
Oh, that's rich character development coming from inside that baby. It's like, baby, can you emote for us? Like, give me a quirky smirk. Could you, baby?
It's actually like a really funny sketch idea. Is that like there's like a baby on set who's like the most asshole like Daniel Day-Lewis method actor, and people are just like, God, this fucking baby just does not leave character. Like, it's just obsessed, and it just cuts to this baby like looking there drooling. They're just like, oh man, she's like, take it easy. Like the cameras aren't rolling. That's really funny. So I would say like there's a lot of times where we looked at each other like, man, that baby's looks are killing it. And then so I tried to look up like that baby today, and I had remembered knowing that it was played by two sisters. Which is, as a con, like there's shots where it's clearly not the same baby. Like there's a few shots where that baby looks completely different. And then I read that it was actually 4 babies that they used based on whatever location they were in, because they shot a little bit in New Zealand and a little bit in, a lot in the UK and a little bit. So they used the sisters in the UK and another one for New Zealand and another one for this other place. And I was like, that makes sense why there's a few shots where you're like, that baby could not look less alike. Like that was kind of a miss. And then, I mean, in a scene that obviously has not aged well, but I just always thought it was hilarious. It's not. But that guy, that fucking bear fucking rapist of a man who like breaks in, Lug or whatever his name is, that comes in, he's like groping at Val Kilmer when Val's in drag. And he says, "Wanna breed?" I always thought like, did he just say, "Do you wanna breed?" Like what kind of fucking line is that? Like that is a crazy line and an even crazier delivery.
It's the nice way to say you want to fuck. Like it's
you trying to fuck? It's also like crazy.
This is how I remember Val Kilmer, because this was the first Val Kilmer movie I ever saw. I distinctly remember this being the introduction of Val Kilmer, because as a kid he was cool. He was super cool.
Well, my mother raised us on black leaf. It's good for you. The tear on your chest, doesn't it, Dick?
So you can't go wrong with Val Kilmer. But he in general, I don't think you can. But this was my introduction to him as an actor, where I vividly remember being like, I want to watch this guy. And so I always knew Val Kilmer from that point on.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. This movie, I know Val Kilmer was famous. He was an A-list star. He did become Batman like 6 years later. So I guess maybe my point is moot. But like this to me should have made him Harrison Ford level, like leading man, and that didn't really pan out. I mean, maybe some of that's his choices because he was a little more artistically minded, but
I think he had like I don't it's an interesting question. I don't remember. I wasn't into film at that level. I'm just watching dumb comedies still today. But I do think he had a shot. The Batman, I think, is a great example. Like, you get tapped to play Batman. I think it's a big deal. You know, he was in Top Gun. He was a major player at a point. And why he didn't transition into like a De Niro, I don't know.
Well, I think because he was like, I love Batman Forever because I saw it when I was at the right age. But like he was kind of a boring Batman and was totally, to me, upstaged by almost everyone else in that movie. So he wasn't like, didn't come out of that being like, oh wow, he really made that movie better. And then he had just a string of like, you know, The Island of Dr. Moreau, which was a really famous flop. And like, I think people really liked the movie The Saint, which I don't remember seeing back in the day. But like, those were like his other 90s bigger hits. He had a supporting role in Heat with De Niro and Pacino. But, and then, you know, he had a reputation for being kind of a prick a little bit, you know, deserved or undeserved, that, you know, it all kind of compounded on itself. But yeah, it's his career is an interesting series of like big successes and some wondering what if. So again, there's a good place to close out. Is Willow the series is coming to Disney Plus.
Yeah. What isn't coming to Disney Plus? Do we have a show on Disney Plus yet?
Yeah, not anymore. not at this rate.
No, Warwick. Shh. Longer once. Warwick. No, forget the W.
Warwick.
Not the first W, the middle one. Warwick.
Warwick.
I think I'm getting it. All right.
Please.
We got it.
Willow, this film, is too dark of a property for Disney Plus. Like, I would just say that would be my overarching fear here for the series, is all that stuff that makes Willow so memorable, even its flaws, like a great deal of those things are like the darkness and like the kind of brutal nature of what's happening. And like, I know you have a problem with like the specific stakes of certain things, but like the stakes are omnipresent that everybody might die because the people are dying. Like shit gets fucked up. And I don't feel like Disney Plus is gonna provide a platform for trolls to rip their own skin off. Like and I think you need a little of that to, you know, jar people awake.
Okay.
To scar people for life.
Yes.
I watched that movie again just last night, and then they started, and I was like, okay, I've seen that. I don't need to see it. It's too much.
All right, we'll see what Disney Plus does.
Great, hire us, Disney Plus.
Please.
We're Disney Plus material.
I got Disney all over me. All over me.